What happens when an innocent-sounding suggestion becomes the final straw in a marriage already cracking with secrets and betrayal? Can one moment of misplaced honesty shatter a carefully crafted double life? And what if, in the ruins, everyone discovers who the real villain truly is? The legal envelope on my kitchen table was thicker than any apology I could offer. But let me start from the beginning, when I still believed I was being reasonable. My name is Lysandra Forsythe, and I've always prided myself on being a modern, progressive woman. At 33, I work as an HR manager at Henderson Logistics, where I've built a reputation for handling delicate situations with tact and diplomacy. My husband Peter, 37, teaches high school mathematics at Lincoln High. We've been married for 9 years, and we have a beautiful 7-year-old daughter named Sophie. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. Peter was grading papers at our kitchen table while I prepared Sophie's lunch for school. Our suburban townhouse felt cozy in the early light, with its tidy living spaces and carefully arranged family photos lining the hallway walls. "Mummy, can I have the strawberry yogurt today?" Sophie asked, bouncing on her toes beside me. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, tucking the container into her lunchbox alongside a sandwich and apple slices. Peter looked up from his stack of algebra tests, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Don't forget she has soccer practice after school today. I can pick her up if you're running late from work." "Actually, I should be done early today. Light meeting schedule," I said, though that wasn't entirely true. I had plans to meet Callum at his fitness studio, but Peter didn't need to know that. Callum Drake had been my boyfriend before Peter, back in our mid-20s. We'd dated for 2 years before I realized he wasn't the settling down type. Recently, he'd opened his own personal training business, and we'd reconnected through social media. What started as innocent catching up had evolved into something more complicated over the past few months. After Sophie left for school and Peter headed to his classroom, I found myself thinking about the growing distance between my husband and me. Our intimate life had become routine, predictable. Peter was gentle and caring, but he lacked the passion and spontaneity I craved. Meanwhile, my conversations with Callum reminded me of what excitement felt like. That evening, after Sophie was tucked into bed, I decided to address the issue head-on. Peter was in our bedroom, reading a mystery novel under the soft glow of his bedside lamp. "Peter, we need to talk," I said, settling onto my side of the bed. He marked his place in the book and gave me his full attention. "What's on your mind?" "It's about us, our relationship, specifically, our intimacy." I chose my words carefully, the way I would during a sensitive HR discussion. "I feel like we've fallen into a rut." Peter's expression grew cautious. "What do you mean?" "I mean we do the same things, the same way, every time. There's no spontaneity, no passion. I love you, but I need more excitement in our marriage." He set his book aside completely. "Okay, what did you have in mind?" This was my opening. I'd rehearsed this conversation in my head multiple times. "I think we could benefit from some outside perspective, someone who could give you some pointers, show you different techniques. Like a marriage counselor." "Not exactly." I took a deep breath. I was thinking someone more hands-on, someone with experience who could demonstrate what works. Peter's brow furrowed. "I'm not following." "Callum," I said simply. "My ex-boyfriend Callum. He's always been very skilled in that area. I thought maybe he could come over and give you some advice, show you what I respond to." The silence that followed was deafening. Peter's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally something I'd never seen before: cold fury. "You want to invite your ex-boyfriend into our bedroom to give me sex tips?" His voice was eerily calm. "When you put it like that, it sounds weird. But think about it practically, Peter. If you wanted to improve at tennis, you'd hire a coach, right? This is no different." Peter stared at me for a long moment. Then he stood up, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Where are you going?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to our dresser and began pulling out clothes, stuffing them into a duffel bag with mechanical precision. "Peter, you're overreacting. We're just talking about improving our marriage." He paused in his packing and looked at me directly. "Lysandra, in 9 years of marriage, you have never once suggested we needed to improve our intimacy. Now, suddenly you want to bring your ex-boyfriend into our bedroom to show me how to please my own wife. Do you hear how that sounds?" "I hear how it sounds to someone with a fragile ego," I shot back. "I'm trying to be open and honest about our needs." "Our needs? Or your needs?" He zipped the bag shut. "Because I was perfectly happy with our marriage until this conversation." "That's the problem, Peter. You're satisfied with mediocrity." He grabbed his jacket from the closet and headed for the bedroom door. I followed him down the hallway, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. "Where are you going to go? It's almost midnight." "My mother's house," he said without turning around. "You're going to run to Edith over this. She already thinks I'm not good enough for you." Peter stopped at the front door and faced me one last time. Maybe she was right. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me standing alone in our foyer. Through the window, I watched his Honda Civic disappear down our quiet street. I told myself he just needed time to cool off. By morning, he'd realize I was only trying to help our marriage. After all, communication was supposed to be the foundation of a healthy relationship, and I was just being communicative. But as I climbed back upstairs to our now empty bedroom, a small voice in my head wondered if I'd miscalculated. I pushed the thought away. Peter was being dramatic, and once he calmed down, he'd see that I was being mature and practical about our problems. I was wrong about almost everything. The next morning brought Sophie's confused questions about why Daddy wasn't at breakfast and where his car was. I told her he had to leave early for a teacher meeting, hating myself for the lie, but not ready to explain the truth to a 7-year-old. At work, I tried to focus on my regular duties, but my mind kept drifting to Peter's reaction. Maybe I had been too direct. Perhaps I should have approached the topic more gradually, laid more groundwork before suggesting Callum's involvement. During my lunch break, I called my sister Marnie. At 29, she was 4 years younger than me and had always been my closest confidant. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a local advertising firm and shared my views on female empowerment and modern relationships. "You did what?" Marnie's voice crackled through my phone as I sat in my car in the office parking lot. "I suggested that Callum could give Peter some guidance in the bedroom. You know, help him understand what I need." "Oh my God, Lysandra, that's brilliant. You're so progressive. Most women would just suffer in silence with boring sex forever." Her validation felt good. Right, I thought I was being mature about it, but Peter completely freaked out. He packed a bag and went to his mother's. "Typical male fragility," Marnie scoffed. "They can't handle the idea that they might not be perfect lovers. His ego is probably crushed." That's what I thought, but now I'm wondering if I should have approached it differently. "No way. You were honest about your needs. That's what healthy relationships are supposed to be about. If Peter can't handle a little constructive criticism, that's his problem." After we hung up, I felt more confident in my position. I decided to text Peter to try to smooth things over. "Hey, I think we both said some things we didn't mean last night. Can we talk about this rationally? Sophie is asking where you are." His response came an hour later. "I'm picking up Sophie from school today. We need some time to think." That evening, Peter arrived at our usual pickup time, but didn't come to the door. I watched from the living room window as Sophie ran to his car and climbed into the back seat. They drove away without him even glancing toward the house. They returned 2 hours later. Sophie bounded through the front door, chattering about the ice cream they'd shared at Dairy Queen, but Peter remained in the driveway. "Where's Daddy going?" Sophie asked as we watched his taillights disappear again. "He's staying at Grandma Edith's for a few days," I said, trying to keep my voice light. Sometimes grown-ups need a little space to think about things. That night, I called my mother, Gloria Harper, hoping for some perspective. At 58, she'd been through her own marital struggles with my father before their divorce, when I was in college. "Mum, Peter and I had a fight, and he's staying at his mother's. I could use some advice." "What was the fight about, honey?" I gave her a sanitized version, emphasizing my desire for better communication and Peter's overreaction to my suggestions. "Lysandra," she said carefully, "marriage counseling exists for a reason. If you're having intimacy issues, there are professional resources available." "I know, but this seemed more direct, more practical." "Involving an ex-boyfriend in your marital problems is never practical, sweetheart. That's a boundary most people wouldn't be comfortable crossing." Her response disappointed me. I'd expected more support, especially from someone who'd left her own marriage when she wasn't happy. The next day at work, I confided in my friend Nina Caro. She was a year younger than me and worked in the accounting department. We'd bonded over our shared frustration with traditional relationship expectations. "I can't believe Peter is being so dramatic about this," I told her during our coffee break. "All I did was suggest a way to improve our sex life." Nina's eyes widened. "Wait, you wanted to bring your ex into the bedroom? Like physically? Not necessarily physically present during the act itself, more like a consultation, a demonstration of techniques. But with your ex-boyfriend? Who better? He knows what I respond to." Nina was quiet for a moment, stirring her latte thoughtfully. "I mean, I get wanting to spice things up, but that seems pretty intense. I can see why Peter might feel threatened." Her lukewarm response frustrated me. I'd expected her to understand my progressive approach to marriage. That evening, I decided to take control of the narrative. I composed a Facebook post about the situation, carefully framing it to highlight Peter's unreasonable reaction while positioning myself as the mature party trying to improve our relationship. Sometimes being honest about your needs in marriage means having difficult conversations. It's disappointing when your partner can't handle open communication about intimacy. Growth requires stepping outside comfort zones. Modern marriage. Communication matters. Personal growth. Within an hour, the post had dozens of likes and comments. Most were supportive, praising my openness and criticizing fragile male egos. But a few responses gave me pause. My college friend Jennifer wrote, "Girl, there's open communication and then there's this. Maybe couples therapy would be a better starting point." My cousin Rachel commented, "I'm all for spicing things up, but involving exes seems like it could get messy. Just saying." But Marnie's response made me feel validated. "So proud of my sister for refusing to settle for mediocrity. Peter needs to step up or step aside. Women deserve passion." I screenshot Marnie's comment and sent it to our family group chat, which included our mother and a few close relatives. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with responses. My Aunt Linda, "What exactly is this about?" My cousin Mike, "Everything okay with you and Peter?" My mother, "Lysandra, we should talk privately about this." But it was too late. The story was out there, spreading through our social circles like wildfire. I told myself I was just being honest about the challenges modern couples face. I had no idea that Peter's mother Edith had seen the post through a mutual friend's share, or that she was already taking screenshots and forwarding them to Peter with messages like, "Look what your wife is saying about your marriage online." The next morning, I woke to a text from Peter that made my stomach drop. "We need to talk. Meet me at Morrison's Cafe at noon. Come alone." Morrison's was a small, quiet place on the edge of town where we'd had our first official date 9 years ago. The choice felt ominous. I arrived first and chose a corner booth, ordering a coffee I didn't really want. When Peter walked in, I barely recognized him. His usual gentle demeanor had been replaced by something harder, more determined. He'd always been a soft-spoken man, preferring harmony to conflict. This version of my husband was a stranger. "Thank you for coming," he said, sliding into the seat across from me without removing his jacket. "Of course. I've missed you. Sophie has too." "I'm sure she has. That's actually what I wanted to talk about." He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of my Facebook post. "This is what you think of our marriage. This is how you want to represent our family online." I was just being honest about our communication issues. "Our communication issues." His voice remained calm, but his eyes were cold. "Lysandra, we never had communication issues until you decided you wanted to bring another man into our bedroom. And instead of working through this privately, you've made it public entertainment. I haven't told anyone the specific details. You've told enough people that my mother received 3 phone calls yesterday from concerned friends asking if our marriage was in trouble. My principal pulled me aside to ask if I needed time off to deal with personal matters. Do you understand what you've done?" The weight of his words began to sink in. "I didn't think—" "No, you didn't think. You didn't think about how this would affect Sophie when the gossip reaches her classmates' parents. You didn't think about my reputation at work. You didn't think about anything except getting validation for your incredibly inappropriate suggestion." I felt tears building behind my eyes. "I was trying to fix our marriage." "Our marriage wasn't broken, Lysandra. At least I didn't think it was until you told me it was. But now—" He shook his head. "Now, I'm not sure there's anything left to fix." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm staying at my mother's indefinitely. It means I think we should consider marriage counseling if you're serious about saving this. And it means you need to stop talking about our private business on social media." "And if I don't agree to counseling?" Peter was quiet for a long moment, his hands wrapped around his untouched coffee cup. "Then I guess we'll have to consider other options." He stood to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Lysandra, I know about Callum." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know you've been meeting with him at his gym. I know about the text messages. I know this whole bedroom advice thing wasn't just a random suggestion." Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me alone in the cafe with the devastating realization that my carefully constructed narrative was falling apart. The weekend brought an uncomfortable family dinner at my mother's house. She'd insisted on hosting, claiming we needed to clear the air about the situation. I arrived to find not just my mother and Marnie, but also my Aunt Linda and cousin Rachel, the same Rachel who'd questioned my approach on Facebook. "So," Aunt Linda said before I'd even sat down, "what's this I hear about you and Peter having problems?" "It's not problems exactly," I said, accepting a glass of wine from my mother. "We're just working through some communication issues." "Communication issues that involve your ex-boyfriend?" Rachel asked pointedly. Marnie jumped to my defense. "Lysandra is being progressive about her marriage. She's not willing to settle for boring, routine intimacy like previous generations did." "There's progressive, and then there's destructive," my mother said quietly. "Honey, I support your right to be happy in your marriage, but bringing an ex-boyfriend into the equation seems like a recipe for disaster." "It's not like I was planning an affair," I protested. "I was trying to find a practical solution to improve things with Peter." "By having another man demonstrate sexual techniques?" Aunt Linda's eyebrows shot up. "Lysandra, that's not practical, that's fantasy." The conversation continued along these lines for another hour, with Marnie supporting my choices, and everyone else expressing varying degrees of concern. By the time I left, I felt more isolated than when I'd arrived. Monday morning brought a new humiliation. As I walked into my office building, I noticed several co-workers whispering and glancing in my direction. My assistant, Kelly, looked uncomfortable when she handed me my morning messages. "Everything okay?" I asked her. There's been some chatter about your Facebook post," she said quietly. "People are talking." My heart sank. I'd forgotten that several Henderson Logistics employees were on my friends list, including people from other departments who barely knew me personally, but now had front-row seats to my marital drama. At lunch, I decided to meet Callum at his fitness studio to discuss the situation. The drive across town gave me time to think about what I wanted to say. Part of me hoped he might offer some perspective on the whole mess. Callum's studio was a converted warehouse space filled with modern equipment and motivational posters. I found him finishing a session with a female client, his athletic build showcased in a fitted tank top and shorts. At 34, he still had the same easy confidence that had attracted me in my 20s. "Lysandra," he said with his familiar grin as his client left, "this is a surprise. How's the marriage advice project going?" "Not well. Peter moved out." Callum's expression shifted to something more serious. "Oh, that's intense. I thought you might have some insight. You know both of us, and you understand what I was trying to accomplish." He gestured for me to sit on one of the workout benches, while he leaned against a weight rack. "Look, Lys, I'm flattered you think I'm some kind of expert, but getting involved in your marriage was never a good idea. But you seemed interested when I first mentioned it." "I was interested in you," he said bluntly. "I thought maybe you were looking for an excuse to reconnect with me, but I'm not trying to be your marriage counselor." The conversation continued for 20 minutes, with Callum making it clear that he had no interest in playing the role I'd envisioned for him. As I prepared to leave, he walked me to my car. "For what it's worth," he said, "Peter's a good guy. If you want to save your marriage, you might want to focus on him instead of looking for outside solutions." That evening, Peter came by to have dinner with Sophie and collect more of his belongings. I tried to engage him in conversation, but he remained politely distant, treating me like a cordial acquaintance rather than his wife. After Sophie went to bed, I cornered him in our bedroom while he packed another bag. "How long is this going to go on?" I asked. "That depends on you," he replied without looking up from his dresser drawer. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to take down the social media posts about our marriage. I want you to stop meeting with Callum, and I want you to consider whether you actually want to be married to me, or if you're just comfortable with the idea of being married." "Of course I want to be married to you." "Do you?" "Because it seems like you want to be married to some version of me that doesn't exist. Some version that's more exciting, more passionate, more like your ex-boyfriend." His words stung because they contained a grain of truth I wasn't ready to acknowledge. "I just want us to be happy." "We were happy, Lysandra. At least I thought we were. But apparently, you've been dissatisfied for a while and just never mentioned it until you decided to involve another man." He zipped up his bag and headed for the door. "I'll pick up Sophie from school tomorrow. We're going to have dinner with my mother." "What are you telling her about us?" "The truth, that her parents are having problems and trying to work through them." After he left, I poured myself a large glass of wine and scrolled through my phone. The Facebook post had continued generating comments, and I noticed that the tone had shifted. More people were questioning my approach, and some were openly critical. A woman named Beth from Sophie's school had written, "Maybe some conversations are better kept private. Just thinking about the kids involved." My former colleague David commented, "This seems like something for a marriage counselor, not social media." Even worse, I noticed that several people had shared the post to their own timelines, spreading the story beyond my immediate circle. The comments on those shares were less kind, with strangers weighing in on my marriage and my character. I deleted the post, but the damage was done. Screenshots lived forever, and I had no control over who had saved copies or where they might surface. Tuesday brought a meeting with my supervisor, Janet Morrison. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd always respected my professionalism. That respect seemed strained as she closed her office door behind me. "Lysandra, I need to discuss some concerns that have been brought to my attention." My stomach dropped. "What kind of concerns?" "Several employees have mentioned seeing social media posts about your personal life that they found inappropriate for someone in HR. As you know, our department handles sensitive employee matters, and we need to maintain a certain level of discretion and professionalism." "I understand." I've already removed the posts. I'm glad to hear that, but I need you to understand that your personal conduct reflects on this department and this company. Going forward, I need you to be more mindful of your online presence. It wasn't a formal reprimand, but the message was clear. My personal drama was affecting my professional reputation. That afternoon, I received a call from Sophie's school. Mrs. Patterson, her teacher, wanted to schedule a conference about Sophie's recent behavior in class. She seemed distracted lately, Mrs. Patterson explained. She's mentioned that her daddy is staying at Grandma's house, and she's asked several times if her parents are getting divorced. I thought you should know that she's clearly affected by whatever is happening at home. The call was a wake-up moment. In my focus on my marriage and my own needs, I'd underestimated how the situation was impacting my daughter. Sophie was picking up on the tension and uncertainty, and it was affecting her sense of security. That evening, I tried calling Peter to discuss the school situation, but he didn't answer. Instead, he sent a text. If it's about Sophie, we can discuss it when I pick her up tomorrow. If it's about us, I'm not ready to talk yet. I was losing control of the narrative, losing my support system, and losing my family. But instead of recognizing my role in creating the crisis, I found myself getting angry. Angry at Peter for being inflexible, angry at my friends and family for not supporting my choices, and angry at a society that couldn't handle a woman being direct about her needs. I had no idea that Peter was quietly documenting everything, saving screenshots of my social media posts, keeping records of my meetings with Callum, and building a case that would soon turn my world completely upside down. 3 weeks into our separation, I was beginning to realize that Peter wasn't coming home anytime soon. He'd established a routine of picking up Sophie from school 3 days a week, taking her for dinner, and returning her by bedtime. On weekends, she stayed overnight at Edith's house, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my growing resentment. My support system was crumbling. Nina from work had grown distant after our HR department received what she described as uncomfortable attention from my social media drama. My mother was politely neutral, but clearly disapproved of my choices. Even Marnie seemed less enthusiastic about my progressive approach to marriage. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening when I decided to meet some friends at Russo's, a popular restaurant and bar downtown. I'd been feeling isolated and thought a night out might help restore some normalcy to my life. I arrived to find Nina, my college friend Jennifer, and 2 other women from our extended social circle already seated at a high-top table near the bar. The conversation felt strained from the moment I sat down. "How are you holding up?" Jennifer asked, with what seemed like forced sympathy. "I'm fine. Peter's the one who chose to leave over a simple suggestion. I'm not going to beg him to come home." "Simple suggestion?" Nina's eyebrows rose. "Lysandra, you wanted to bring your ex-boyfriend into your bedroom to give your husband sex tips. That's not simple." The other women at the table exchanged glances. I realized this wasn't going to be the supportive evening I'd hoped for. "I was trying to improve our marriage through honest communication," I said defensively. "I'm sorry if that makes people uncomfortable." "It's not about being uncomfortable," said Maria, a mutual friend from our book club. "It's about boundaries. Most people would consider what you suggested to be a form of emotional cheating, if not worse." "That's ridiculous. I wasn't planning to have an affair." "But you were planning to have another man demonstrate sexual techniques for your husband's benefit." Jennifer's tone was incredulous. "How is that not crossing a line?" "Because it was meant to help our marriage, not hurt it." "By humiliating Peter?" Nina shook her head. "Lysandra, can you honestly say you don't see how that would make him feel inadequate and betrayed?" The conversation continued to spiral, with each woman expressing some version of the same sentiment, that my suggestion had been inappropriate and hurtful. They seemed to have coordinated their responses, ganging up on me with their conventional thinking. "You know what?" I said, standing up abruptly. "I thought I could count on my friends to support me during a difficult time. Instead, You're all judging me for being honest about my needs and unwilling to settle for mediocrity. We're not judging you for having needs, Maria said calmly. We're concerned about the way you're trying to meet them. By destroying your marriage and embarrassing your husband publicly, Jennifer added. Because that's what you've done, whether you want to admit it or not. Peter destroyed our marriage by being too insecure to handle adult conversation about intimacy. Adult conversation? Nina laughed bitterly. Lysandra, adults don't invite their exes to give bedroom demonstrations. Adults go to marriage counseling, or read books, or have private conversations with their spouses. They don't broadcast their problems on social media and then blame everyone else for being judgmental. I felt ganged up on and betrayed. These women, who I'd considered close friends, were attacking me instead of offering support. I can see I'm not welcome here, I said, grabbing my purse. You're welcome here, Jennifer said quietly. But not if you're going to keep pretending that everyone else is the problem. We care about you, but we can't support choices that are obviously destructive. I left the restaurant feeling more isolated than ever. Instead of going home, I drove to Callum's apartment complex. I needed to talk to someone who understood me, someone who wouldn't judge my choices. Callum answered his door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, clearly surprised to see me. Lysandra, what's wrong? Can I come in? I just need someone to talk to. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside to let me enter. His apartment was masculine and minimally decorated, with workout equipment in one corner and sports memorabilia on the walls. I just had dinner with some friends, I said, settling onto his couch. Or people I thought were friends. They all think I'm some kind of monster for suggesting you could help Peter and me. Callum sat in a chair across from me, maintaining physical distance. Look, Liz, I've been thinking about this situation, and I think maybe your friends have a point. Not you too. Hear me out. I knew you when we were dating. You were always looking for excitement, always pushing boundaries. That's part of what attracted me to you. But Peter's not like that. He's steady, reliable, conventional. When you married him, didn't you know that's who he was? People can change, people can grow, but they can't become completely different people. And asking him to let another man, his wife's ex-boyfriend, teach him how to please you sexually, that's not asking him to grow, that's asking him to accept humiliation. I stared at him in shock. I thought you understood me. I do understand you. That's why I'm telling you this. You're trying to turn Peter into something he's not, instead of deciding whether you want to be married to who he actually is. So you think I should just settle for boring, routine sex for the rest of my life? I think you should figure out what you actually want. Do you want to be married to Peter, or do you want to be married to the idea of Peter if he were more like me? The conversation continued for another hour, with Callum refusing to play the role I'd cast him in. He made it clear that he wasn't interested in being part of my marital drama, and suggested that I needed to make some serious decisions about my priorities. When I finally left his apartment, I felt completely alone. My husband had moved out, my friends thought I was wrong, my family was disappointed in me, and even my ex-boyfriend was refusing to support my choices. But instead of considering that maybe everyone else had a point, I doubled down on my conviction that I was being unfairly judged. I drove home planning my next move, a more detailed social media post explaining my side of the story and calling out the small-minded thinking that was preventing people from understanding my progressive approach to marriage. I had no idea that Peter had already been in contact with a divorce attorney, or that he'd been documenting every social media post, every meeting with Callum, and every piece of evidence that might be relevant in a custody hearing. The reckoning was coming, and I was completely unprepared for it. The divorce papers arrived on a Monday morning, delivered by a courier who asked me to sign for the thick manila envelope. I stared at the return address, Hoffman & Associates, Family Law, with growing dread. Inside were meticulously prepared documents outlining Peter's petition for divorce, along with a proposed custody arrangement that would give him primary physical custody of Sophie. The papers cited irreconcilable differences and included a request for spousal support and child support calculations. But it was the attached evidence file that made my hands shake. Peter's attorney had compiled screenshots of every social media post I'd made about our marriage, including the ones I'd deleted. There were printed copies of text messages between Callum and me, time-stamped records of my visits to his fitness studio, and witness statements from people who'd observed our interactions. Most damaging were the statements from Sophie's teacher and school counselor, documenting her anxiety and behavioral changes since our separation. There were also character references for Peter from colleagues, parents of Sophie's classmates, and community members who praised his stability and dedication as a father. The message was clear. Peter wasn't just leaving me. He was building a case to take our daughter. I called the law office immediately, demanding to speak with someone about the papers. The receptionist scheduled me for a consultation with an attorney named Patricia Vance for later that week. "Mrs. Forsythe," Attorney Vance said when I arrived at her downtown office, "I've reviewed the documents your husband filed, and I have to be honest with you. He's built a very strong case." She was a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Her office walls were lined with law books and family court certificates. "Strong case for what? I haven't done anything wrong." "Let's go through this systematically." She opened a folder containing copies of Peter's filing. "Your husband is alleging that you've engaged in behavior that demonstrates poor judgment and creates an unstable environment for your daughter." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Let's look at the evidence. You publicly discussed intimate details of your marriage on social media, exposing your family to gossip and humiliation. You maintained an inappropriate relationship with an ex-boyfriend while married. You suggested involving this ex-boyfriend in intimate activities with your husband, and when your husband objected to these behaviors, you escalated the conflict rather than seeking professional help. I was trying to improve our marriage. Mrs. Forsythe, family courts don't care about your intentions. They care about your actions and their impact on the child involved. Your daughter has been showing signs of anxiety and distress at school. Her teacher reports that she's asked multiple times if her parents are getting divorced and whether she'll have to choose between them. The weight of the situation began to sink in. What does this mean for custody? It means your husband has documented a pattern of behavior that could be seen as prioritizing your personal desires over your family's well-being. Unless we can build a compelling counter-narrative, the court might agree with his request for primary custody. But I'm her mother. I love Sophie. Love isn't enough in family court. Stability, good judgment, and the child's best interests are what matter. Your husband has positioned himself as the stable parent while painting you as impulsive and self-centered. I left the attorney's office in a daze. The consultation fee alone had been $300, and Attorney Vance had estimated that fighting the custody arrangement could cost upwards of $15,000, money I didn't have. That evening, I tried calling Peter to discuss the situation, but he didn't answer. Instead, I received a text from his attorney instructing me to direct all communication through legal counsel. The next few days brought a cascade of humiliations. Word of the divorce had spread through our social circles, and I found myself increasingly isolated. At work, colleagues who'd once been friendly now kept their distance, clearly uncomfortable with the drama surrounding my personal life. My supervisor, Janet, called another meeting to discuss my ongoing personal issues and their impact on the workplace. This time, the conversation was more serious. "Lysandra, I've received complaints from several employees about feeling uncomfortable with the amount of personal drama that's followed you into the office. Additionally, your recent performance has been inconsistent, and you've missed several important deadlines. I'm going through a divorce. It's been stressful. I understand that, and the company wants to be supportive. But we also need to maintain professional standards. I'm placing you on a performance improvement plan, effective immediately. You'll have 90 days to demonstrate that you can separate your personal issues from your work responsibilities. A performance improvement plan was often the first step toward termination. My job, which had always been a source of stability and identity, was now in jeopardy. That weekend, Sophie stayed with Peter and his mother, as had become routine. I spent Saturday alone, scrolling through social media and seeing updates from friends who were moving on with their lives while mine fell apart. On Sunday, I decided to visit my mother and try to rebuild some family support. I found her in her garden, tending to the roses she'd planted after my father left. "How are you holding up, honey?" she asked, pulling off her gardening gloves. "Not well. Peter filed for divorce, and he's trying to get primary custody of Sophie." My mother was quiet for a moment, then gestured for me to sit on her porch swing. "What does your attorney say?" "That he has a strong case because of the social media posts and the situation with Callum." "I see. Mum, I need you to write a character reference for me, something that shows I'm a good mother and that Peter is being vindictive." She was quiet for a long time, looking out at her garden. "Lysandra, I love you, and I want what's best for you and Sophie. But I can't write something I don't believe." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Peter isn't being vindictive. He's protecting his daughter from a situation that's gotten out of control. You made choices that put your marriage and your family at risk, and now you're facing the consequences." "You're taking his side." "I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm looking at the facts. You wanted to bring another man into your bedroom to teach your husband how to please you. When he objected, you made it public on social media. You continued meeting with your ex-boyfriend, despite knowing it was damaging your marriage. And through all of this, you've refused to acknowledge that your choices might have been wrong. So you won't help me? I'll help you by telling you the truth. If you want to save your relationship with your daughter, you need to stop fighting Peter and start taking responsibility for the mess you've created. I left my mother's house feeling more alone than ever. Even my own family was abandoning me. That night, I composed a long email to Peter, pouring out my frustrations and demanding that he reconsider the custody arrangement. I accused him of being vindictive, of using Sophie as a weapon, and of refusing to forgive a simple mistake. His response came through his attorney the next day, a formal cease and desist letter instructing me to stop contacting him directly and warning that any further harassment would be documented for the court. The legal machinery was in motion, and I was powerless to stop it. But instead of accepting responsibility for my role in the disaster, I convinced myself that I was the victim of a system that couldn't handle a woman who refused to conform to traditional expectations. I was about to learn just how wrong I was. The custody hearing landed in late October, 6 weeks after Peter filed. I sat with Attorney Vance as Peter's side laid out evidence like clockwork. Judge Margaret Chen listened without blinking. Peter testified that I'd suggested my ex demonstrate intimacy techniques. Then I posted our issues online and kept meeting Callum. Sophie's teacher described her anxiety. When I took the stand, I tried remorse, but under cross I got defensive and blamed Peter. 2 weeks later, the ruling arrived. Peter got primary custody. I got supervised weekends. The judge cited poor judgment, social media, and lack of remorse. Then my job collapsed too.